zoom back to the beginning of my talk. Right, okay, so I'm going to stop and drink a lot during this talk. I apologise for that. Hi, my name's Richard. I'm going to talk pretty much from my own experience, but especially from what I've learned from listening to other people, a lot of whom are actually in this room, especially sitting in this row, it's kind of about my journey as someone who has wanted and cared about being open, and how I've tried to go about that. These are just some observations and thoughts about how we can do that effectively. So, in case it matters who I am, this is my main job. I'm the zookeeper of Saffron Walden's unofficial zoo. And then the rest of the time, I'm someone who's trying to be more open, a practicing scientist. I'm a fellow for science funded by Mozilla. I'm a PhD student in plant sciences, like some people here. And I also have a remote position at UC Davis as an official troublemaker. And I'm involved in various projects, but two of the most interesting ones are the Content Mine. Again, there are a bunch of people here involved in that, and BioJulia. Okay, so things I've been thinking about and trying to keep in mind. I've got a new fellowship this year, and it's very. I'm very lucky to have it. It gives me a lot of time to think and try and do things to encourage myself and other scientists to be more open. And these are some of the things that I've been thinking about. So the traditional thing that people think about is with the work that we produce, how we can do that in an open way. But I want to talk a little bit about how we think and speak and write. That when we use things and when we choose whether or not to make things, that can have a big effect. The way we interact with one another, especially in whether we challenge one another and support one another, and how we do these things to ourselves, and some pitfalls that we can learn from the history of people trying to change the world. So the traditional thing is that in open access, open data, these kinds of things, so that when we do some work, the way to be open about that is to put it in a public place and make it free. And usually people are talking about free as in freedom, as in I can leave right now, and as in beer, as in I don't have to pay for it. More recently, I've been noticing that it matters a lot whether it's free as in there's no FUD, no fear, no uncertainty, and no doubt about what you can do with it. Because if something is legally free, but somebody tells you otherwise, then it's not really free. And the simple thing is putting a visible license on everything. It matters a lot that you tell people, if you want them to do something, you want them to have the freedom to do something, that you tell them explicitly that they have that freedom. Cameron talked about these things. It matters that someone can find your work if you want them to be able to use it or reuse it. And it matters that when they find it, they can get at it somehow. It's in the format or the language or the wording that they can make use of. These things matter. But beyond what we traditionally talk about, if we, the people here, are interested in openness and we think it's important, we think open science is important, then it's important that we think about that you bear it in mind a lot, and Cameron also drew attention to this. But for me, I've been through this iterative process over and over again of what does it mean for things to be open. When I'm promoting openness or telling people that I think it's important to be open, what does that mean? Because at some point I'm going to say that to someone and they're going to challenge me, and if I don't have an answer, I've lost them. And why does it matter? So globally, why do we care that openness is a thing? For individuals, what difference does it make? Because when you're in conversation with people, and for yourself, if you start questioning your own motivations, why am I doing something? How shall I push through this challenging time? It matters that you understand exactly why you're doing something, exactly why it's important. And how we can achieve it, of course, that's why we're all here. It's fairly obvious, but it's worth just revisiting. For me, I've started revisiting a lot as people challenge me. Are the things that we're doing really the right ones? Sometimes you have to act, but it's worth thinking about whether we're doing the right things over and over again. So, when we communicate with each other, we make a lot of choices about how we do that. And so, when we speak about openness, or even whether we choose to, so it matters at all that you say something about the fact that you believe in openness. If you think openness is important, saying that to somebody actually makes a difference. If you keep quiet about it, that's not going to have a big effect. So telling people on the internet is what we're all very good at. That is important, but what's more important is in those private conversations where people are willing to share with you what their fears and motivations are. They're the times to advocate and not to back away from what you really think. And it matters that you say things to the people who make decisions. They're the hardest ones to say things to sometimes, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later. But enthusing people who are your peers is important, but challenging people who are much higher up is also important. And the language that you use when you're doing these things also matters a lot, because it's very easy to exclude people simply by using language that they don't understand, or that makes them feel that they're not part of an in-group that you are part of. So jargon, in-jokes, these kinds of things, they make you feel good because you're part of a community. They make other people feel bad. And if what you want is to bring people with you, then you should consider these things, or we should consider these things. I try to, and I think I'm probably very bad at it. I'm a scientist, and almost the entire process of science is finding out things and then saying them in the most indecipherable way possible. So trying to revisit that over and over again and pick it apart and be open in the language that we use is really hard. But also thinking about, if you're going to say challenging things, or you want to say anything on the internet or in person, what effect is that going to have on someone who isn't exactly like you? Just the simple act of bearing that in mind is something that I'm ashamed to say that I did not do very much until, again, challenged by people. And so another aspect of this is that if you want people to be involved, and you've already got a club of people who are, if you don't actively invite them, they may never feel welcome, even if you try in all sorts of other ways to make it look attractive. Telling people, we actually want you, we'd love you to be part of this thing that we're building and doing, it works. And so in all of these things that you do, you can ask people to tell you why it didn't work. And in my experience, that at least gets some response. I could probably do it better, but inviting feedback is the only way you're going to learn. If you're doing something wrong and you can't see it, somebody else is put off by it. If you can convince them at least to tell you why they don't like you. So a huge thing at open conferences and events is people displaying all the wonderful things that they've made or that they've built. Communities and things on the internet, mostly things on the internet, but people build amazing things. And looking at them and saying, well, that is great, someone's building something really fantastic, is a very easy thing to do. And it's nice to know that they're there, but they don't matter at all if you don't actually use them. So every day when you make a decision about, well, what things am I going to use? Where am I going to talk to people? Where am I going to put stuff? And what tools am I going to use when I work? If you're actually, just every time you're making that question, ask whether you're doing it in such a way that you can promote something that you believe in. It's a simple modification to your behavior that can make a bigger difference, because people who build tools don't build them if nobody wants to use them. Scratch that. People do build them if nobody wants to use them, but they'll stop building them if nobody does use them. Okay, and so the converse of that is that everybody here has insight. They have domain knowledge. If you care about openness, you definitely have a unique perspective, and you have ideas about things that could be done, or why things that are already being done are not being done as well as they could be. So contribute stuff back, because if you have that thought and don't do anything about it, we've completely lost that contribution that would have been valuable. So make things, and I don't mean make things in the way that creative people are glamorized. It's not software or art or something like that that matters. Just make something, a community, a network, a policy, a decision, a commitment, resources and tools as well. For me, actually, this has been a huge thing. So probably the biggest change in my trying to be open went from being extremely frustrated about how unopen science was and grumbling about it to myself all the time, to every time I had an idea, well, thinking, okay, I've got a weekend, or I've got an evening, can I just spend that evening working on this thing and start to make it happen? So I think it's important to make ourselves uncomfortable a lot. And actually, this isn't for everybody, because some people are already challenging themselves and making them feel uncomfortable all the time. There's a right amount to challenge yourself. So for me, at least, it's been important to just think every now and then, could I be behaving better? Are my actions consistent with the things that I'm saying? Am I actually doing the openness that I'm talking about? And if I've made some kind of mistake, especially a behavioral mistake, especially if you're a man, and you've been made aware that you've done something, admitting to others and yourself that you've done something wrong, and then sincerely apologizing for it, and actually changing your behavior, those things matter a lot. And then changing your mind, so just being open to, if you're having a discussion with somebody, you're not having a discussion with somebody if you're just telling them what you think. Listen when people who disagree with you tell you what they think. For me, that's been a huge thing. Just it's very easy as a scientist to sort of take this position of, well, I've formed these views, and I believe I've done it in a rational and evidence-based way, and therefore I'm going to stick to my position. It's a debate. I've chosen my position, and I have to convince you of it. But that's not a way to make a lot of progress if what you want is to bring a whole community with you. And then challenging others takes a lot of bravery sometimes, especially if you're in a junior position, which is when it matters to do it as a junior person. But to your peers and to people above you, if they act badly, tell them about it, and sometimes tell them about it in public, but it depends who they are. Sensitively, tell them about it. If people are making mistakes and you genuinely have a reason for thinking that they could do better, tell them about it. I'd like to know. If I act badly or if I make mistakes, I really do want to know about it. But it's reciprocal, so if you think that there are things wrong in the world and you don't do anything about it, well, then they're not going to get better. And never, ever, ever respect authority. This is something that for some reason I was born believing this, and I've just become more and more convinced of it over time. Because if someone ever tries to tell you or anyone else that a thing is true or that they should do something because they know better or that way or any other kind of thing like that, well then, those are exactly the kinds of people who are causing the problem. Tacitus said it very well, that if you want to know who's controlling you, see who you're not allowed to criticize. For me, it's been a kind of a very liberating thing to specifically call out people who have some sort of power over me. So leaders in my field, find them on Twitter, and if they're saying stupid things, say, you're saying stupid things. But you need to bear in mind that sometimes those things can be dangerous. You need to support yourself, you need to look after yourself. Because if you, given all of this stuff, if you believe that you have something important to say or important to do, that we collectively want to make the world more open, we need to take care of ourselves. So pressure of the kind that exists in academia anyway, exists in life anyway, but also the kind that we put ourselves under when we go and try and be activists, which people sometimes don't like to label themselves as. But if you have an idea and you think other people should believe that idea, that is being an activist. And it can be really stressful, especially when the world is very stubborn about changing, which it is about openness. Your bodily and mental health come first. Mental health, people don't talk about it a lot or not enough. It matters a lot. You should take care of yourself. Challenging people and just speaking out in public, these things take a lot of bravery. And it is important to try and, for me at least, it's been important to try and push myself. But then we have fear for a reason. If something feels dangerous, please just ignore that completely, because things can be dangerous. People are not always nice. If you're going to challenge someone in public, call out a leader in your field on Twitter, think about what the effects of that might be, because I can do that from a relative position of privilege as a white male in Cambridge. In the UK, I'm fairly stable in my assumption that if I call out somebody, say, actually, I think what you've just said is wrong, or you could be taking your responsibility more seriously as a leader in our field, they're not going to tank my career or hurt me mentally or physically. They might, but I'm pretty sure they're not. That doesn't apply to everybody. And if you have any sense that it might happen to you, take it seriously. If you want to call that person out, do it by proxy. Come and ask me and I'll call them out for you. And this is something that I found very hard, is that given all of this stuff, getting very excited about being open and trying to change the world, sometimes you just feel like, well, why don't we just do something about it? Let's just go and make the thing that'll completely blow apart the entire system and make it all come crumbling down. And actually, rash actions, especially if you've just thought of them on your own and haven't discussed them with other people, are often very silly. So find people who are cleverer than you, because we are all surrounded by people who are cleverer than us, and ask them for feedback on your idea. And if they say, yeah, maybe just sleep on that one before releasing that virus. Yeah, sometimes the most extreme reactionary thing is not the best. And then supporting others can make a huge difference. So as someone who was coming from not really understanding anything about open science to somebody who cared about it very deeply, it made a huge difference to me to have a community in Cambridge and on the internet of people who were saying, well, look, that isn't easy, and we know it isn't. It's okay for it to be a struggle, but it's important that you're doing what you're doing. So being valued by people who are already doing the thing, that helped. So as somebody who's now involved, I try and remember what it was like to not be involved. And I probably can't do that very well. And a way around that is to ask people who aren't involved and listen to what they have to say. And if you're in a position of privilege or power, a really nice way to use that, apart from, shouting from your soapbox, is actually just to quietly leave the door open. If you're in a position of privilege or power and you have the opportunity to make a change which allows other people to follow you, who may not have been able to open the door themselves or had it held open for them, that is probably one of the most important things you can do. And then smiling and waving, just saying, we see you, we see what you're doing, we think it's great. That makes a huge difference. So I know a lot of people who act in the community, or they're doing things, and if they're not getting any kind of feedback, they're going to stop eventually. And it's nice to just keep an eye out for people who are doing good things and tell them that you think they're doing good things. So, people have tried to change the world many, many, many times in the past. Most of the time when it works because they've done it by violence, and that isn't really what we're trying to achieve, I hope. Very occasionally, attempts to change the world without violence do work. But the reasons most of them fail have been well studied, and it's worth, if you care about trying to lead openness or encouraging it on a large scale, it's worth thinking about what are the traps. One of the classic things is an invisible map. People know exactly what the world should look like, and they can draw it in their head. And then they try and project that map onto the ground and start acting as though it were real. This is what we did when by we I mean not me, the British colonial powers tried to literally redraw the map of the world. It doesn't work. They thought, well, this will be nice. Look how pretty this map is. We'll put it on the floor, and people will live respecting the boundaries that we've drawn. And of course, that's incredibly destructive. So, if we want the world to be open, and we think that all of the ways that we think people should behave are important, you can't just ignore the way the world really works. You have to actually think about that. A second thing is echo chambers. So, a thing that activists like to do is get together, as we are doing now, and talk to one another and say, aren't we doing the right thing? Isn't it all very important? And haven't we got great ideas about how to do it? And then you basically just surround yourself with people who agree with you, because the other people, well, they don't agree with you, so it's not very interesting or very nice to listen to what they have to say. Well, that is almost guarantees you that you're going to fail. So if you're on Twitter, a simple thing to do is just look at the people you follow on Twitter. Are they all from the same places as you? Are they all the same gender as you? Do they take your position on things that you care about? And if the answer to any of those things are yes, then you should actively go out and look for people who are different to you, and start listening to what they actually have to say. I'm not saying that everybody else has interesting or important things to say. Not everybody in the open community has interesting or important things to say. I don't necessarily have interesting or important things to say, but still, it's important to listen to other people. And cognitive biases are very well studied. We know a lot about the things that cause humans to be irrational when they think they're being extremely rational. They have been studied a lot, and even knowing about them, it's hard to completely overcome them, or impossible probably. But being aware of the fact that having committed to a position, for example, you are very likely to exclusively believe arguments that support the position you've already. It's just one example of a cognitive bias that will completely derail any attempts that you have to engage with people on a large scale and make any kind of change. It's worth just reading and thinking about them. And then when you're acting, when you're behaving and talking, look back over the stuff that you've done and think, oh God, that was completely informed by my bias. How can I avoid doing that in the future? And for me, again, that this is especially important for men. It's especially important for people who are the dominant privileged group in any setting. That if what you want is to do good things, then usually the best way to do that is to shut up and listen to what other people have to say. I know that's ironic given that I'm up here. I'm not saying all of you shut up and listen to what I say. I'm saying that one of the best things I've ever done is sit quietly and listen in a discussion group and not say anything at all the entire time. If you're a guy and you're in a room full of people and they're having a discussion, you will probably feel very strongly that you have something important to say. But just not saying it, just not saying it at all, and waiting to the end of the discussion group and thanking everyone else and then leaving, that is a refreshing thing to try. If you haven't done it, I suggest trying it. I'm probably wrong about lots of the stuff that I've said, and I've definitely left a lot of stuff out. So I'd like to hear from you about what I missed out, and if I can help or support anything that anybody is doing in Cambridge and beyond. I have I've been being generously supported this year to do that with almost my entire energy and time. So if I can help, maybe you don't know whether I can help. It's worth checking. Please get in contact, and if you want to contact me in secret, you can do that as well.